Hi guys. So today we're going to start on lesson 3, understanding fossil timelines. As you remember from yesterday, we had some homework that went along with that, and you were asked to read the article Fossil Dating. We're going to go ahead and discuss some of that so you were able to understand it. There was a worksheet that goes along with it so you could answer some questions that help guided you with the reading. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, what was the main idea of our reading? We should be able to define this. The main idea, right? So it's basically essentially talking about what fossil dating is. What is fossils? What is organisms? How do we trace it? Who does finds fossils? These are essentially kind of the main ideas of our reading. So you should be able to understand that. The next thing is you should be able to define keywords that you found in the reading. Again, geologists should be some, evolution, fossils, body fossils, organisms, trace fossils. Those are all things you should have been able to define along with paleontologists. These are all keywords that you could have utilized inside of that reading. So make sure that you have those listed down. You are supposed to have 3, so make sure that you have at least 3 on your paper. So let's go over some key questions. The Devonian period is considered the age of fishes. Would you expect to find a trapepod, animal with 4 legs, a fossil closer to the Carboniferous period, or the Silurian period, and why? Your answer should be something to this effect. It was the Carboniferous period. Trapepod fossils were found after the Devonian period, and the Silurian came before. So that is the answer to your question, is the Carboniferous period. Okay? Make sure you have the correct answer for that. I will be going over those answers for you too, and you will have a chance to possibly correct those. So, all right. So what information would you need to find more precise age of a dinosaur? Well, the age of the cemetery rock is the fossils that they were found in. So as determined by an absolute or radioactive dating. So this is essentially what you need to do in order to find a more precise age of a rock, or age of the dinosaurs and the plants, essentially. So that's how you get that information. Okay. All right. The next one. So, certain kinds of shells are always found in rock layers lower than the layers with plant fossils. Dinosaur fossils show up in layers above with plant fossils. What does this tell you about organisms that lived? All right, well, let's talk about that. So, organisms with shells were oldest, right? Plants then next, and then dinosaurs more recent. The dinosaurs and plants lived at all the same time. So, the thing is if you remember kind of some of the things we talked about, and again through reading the fossil dating, one of the things you should be able to understand is that, the shells were the oldest. If you remember, we talked about some of the things we discussed about, the water, and then the plants, and then the dinosaurs that lived. And there were plants around dinosaurs too, but that's kind of how the series of events go. So that should be your answer for that one. The last one. Would you expect to find fish fossils in rock 550 million years old? And explain your answer. No, you wouldn't. Fish did not appear until later in the fossil record. This was during the Ordovician period. So, yeah, that's essentially what you need to have down. So, no, they didn't appear until later in the records, fossil records. So, one of the things I want to talk about briefly is paleontologists. Now, paleontologist is not something, it's a main idea, and it's something you should probably have written down. But who and what is a paleontologist? They're scientists who study fossils. They find patterns that demonstrate by principles of superposition, that to be consistent. In other words, if they don't find skeletons of organisms like horses in the same layer of rock, they find fossils in the first insects. If they did, they could not rely on fossil records. So paleontologists are the people that spend time looking for rocks. They understand things. So paleo means ancient. Onto refers to being, and ologist means the study. So again, they study ancient beings. They study fossils. Okay, that's what a paleontologist is. All right, so discussing our fossil records. Okay, so we talked a little bit about some fossils, and we looked at some fossils yesterday. So we're going to talk a little bit about an enchinoid, a shark tooth, and a snail fossils and what they have in common. So in your worksheets, you should be able to answer these questions and be able to give me very specific details of what they have in common. Okay, so what do they have in common? Well, first of all, they're all marine animals. Okay, they all live in bodies of water. Marine means water. So they're marine animals. The fossils are made from hard parts, either bone or shell. Okay, so remember, a tooth is actually technically a bone. So that is why you see that. An enchinoid is mainly a shell, and same with a snail. And a shark tooth is again a bone. But again, they're all made of hard parts. That's what they have in common. And they're marine animals. So make sure you have those key things written down. One of the things we should also keep in mind is why don't we have fossils, and why don't they have soft parts? Well, the reason why is the organisms are rotted or were eaten away. That's why things still exist. So, for example, when we're buried as human beings, and we're not, cremated, what happens is we decay, our bodies deteriorate, but there's certain things that still exist, and that's our teeth and our bones, like our skull and our femurs, and all those things still exist, but everything decays. That's why maybe sometimes if you go to the beach, you'll see even a fish, skeleton. These are all things that still exist because everything else decays or rots away. So these are things we need to understand, because conditions, change how things exist and how long they'll last for. So why don't we have fossils for every organism that lived? Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. Well, let's talk about that actually. If an organism didn't have hard parts, it would not fossilize. So there's certainly a lot of things that existed in the past that do no longer exist and that we don't know existed. And it's only because they weren't able to fossilize because they didn't have hard parts, such as bone or shells. Other things that may have died in place won't get fossilized. So essentially, if they died in a place that wouldn't get fossilized, such as like sediment rock or sand, things like that, these are reasons as to why we would maybe not know they exist as well. Again, the entire organism could have been eaten. One of the things you'll see when we look at an owl pellet is that, like for example, owls, they eat and digest, but they throw things up. So those are things that are able to, we're able to see and understand. But there's also things that get eaten, like tigers, lions, and bears that eat the whole entire organism. So we would never know that they ever existed. So these are reasons as to why sometimes we don't know if every organism that ever lived. And the last key information we need to know about this is that organisms might have fossilized, but the fossils could have been destroyed or not yet found. There are still people that are searching for fossils, and there are still people that are researching these things and still trying to understand our history. The wonderful thing about history is that we will never understand because we were never really there. And it's very fascinating because we can only tried to understand based off the information we're given. And fossils is one of those key things of information that we're given to help us understand what existed prior to who we are. So that's exactly why we don't know about all the organisms that ever lived. So the last thing you're going to do today is on your timelines, on your worksheets, you'll see that there's orders. We're going to order the fossils from oldest event to the newest event. So let's go ahead and do that together. So right here at the bottom, you see oldest to newest, okay? Essentially what I'm going to have you do is you're going to order it, essentially. So let's talk about that. So if you look at the timeline and you look at the times, it gives you the dates. The oldest rock is known to be 4.3 billion years old. So you're going to go ahead and put that over here on the oldest rock, okay? The oldest insect, so this is a 410 million years. So you're probably going to have that somewhere down here, but we'll go ahead and do this in order. The oldest known fossil is 4.7 billion years ago. It's a single-celled bacteria. So we are going to go ahead and take this one, the 4.7 billion, and put it right here. The oldest fish fossil is 510 million years ago. It's an ocean dwelling. So we're going to go ahead and take that one over here, the oldest fish fossil, and put it next to that one. All right, so then you're going to go ahead and do that with the rest of them and put them in order. All right. The last thing you're going to do is just make sure that your timelines are completed and all your work is turned in for tomorrow, so I can make sure to update your grades. Make sure that all your work is turned in by that time, so I can make sure to give you credit for your class. This is going to be your stamp for where your grade is at currently. So go ahead and make sure you get that done and turn that in, so your grades are updated. If you have any questions, please email me or post on the forum so I can go ahead and answer those questions for you. If you have any other things you need from me, just let me know. Thank you and have a great day.